Hello everybody. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to set up a Bukkit server from scratch on Windows. In this case I was trying to make a sort of dual Windows and Linux video and I just hit too many bumps. So I'm going to start with Windows here, even though I prefer to work on Linux, and get you guys set up, and then maybe I'll make the Linux version later. So anyway, some prerequisites. First off, you do need to have the newest version of Java, or at least a nicely up-to-date version. Just go to www.java.com, do free Java download, and you actually don't want to click this big red button, as tempting as it is. You want to click See All Java Downloads. Now you need to download the version that is specific for your type of Windows. In my case, I'm on 64-bit Windows. If you're on 32-bit, you want to get 32-bit. If you're not sure, you can click Start, right-click on Computer here, and go to Properties, and you'll see here it'll say 64-bit or 32-bit operating system. So that's how you can find out. So anyway, once you've downloaded the right version for your system, you just want to go ahead and run the installer. I'm not going to do it because I've already got this installed. If you have the option to install McAfee Security Scanner or something, please deny that because McAfee is a pile of shite. Yeah. Anyway, so once you've got Java installed, the next thing we need to do is get Bukkit. So let's go to dl.bukkit.org. Download bukkit.org. So we're just going to download this, but actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new folder for Minecraft, or specifically for my Minecraft server. I'm going to go into, let's just go into my user folder, make a new folder called Craft Bukkit. You can name this whatever you want, it doesn't matter. Typically I actually call it Minecraft, but their wiki says Craft Bukkit, so I figure I'll keep it simple for you guys. So let's download Craft Bukkit. Just click the big button, that'll download the newest recommended build. If you click alternate versions right below that, you can see they make builds constantly, like several a day it seems like. Now you can see there's a couple versions newer than the recommended build. These ones are probably unstable to a point, or at least not quite as tested as the recommended build. Typically a recommended build is safe because it's at the very least been kind of tested, and most plugins will be updated to work with that. Okay, so we downloaded this. Now I actually want to rename the file, so you can right click and do rename, and then we're just going to call it craftbukkit.jar. We're going to get rid of all that version number stuff. That's just so that the scripts that they give you on their wiki will work. You can also rename the files in the scripts themselves, but we'll keep it simple. Okay, so we got all these here, and now what we actually want to do is right click and do new text document. And you can call this whatever you want. We're going to call it Start Minecraft. Enter. Okay, now this is a .txt file. If you cannot see the file extensions, this is important. You need to turn those on. And how you do that is going to be, and that is under Organize, new folder and search options. And then you want to go to View, and just make sure that hide extensions for known file types. It's right underneath those two radio circles. Just make sure that that is unchecked. By default, it will be checked. There's also some nice things like show hidden files or show protected operating system files. If you're actually not a noob with computers, you're probably just going to want to have all of those showing, but whatever. Anyway, right click on this text file now that you can see the .txt at the end, and rename it .bat. That stands for a batch script. Essentially batch meaning just running a bunch of commands in succession. Okay, so whoops, sorry. Alright, so to edit this, you want to right click and choose edit, and it should open with Notepad. If it asks you what to open it with, choose Notepad. Alright, so we want to scroll down here on the Bukkit wiki. You can get to that by clicking Bukkit wiki from the download page, and just scroll down to setting up a server. I'm actually not going to copy this stuff into my description because it might change someday. I'm just going to link you guys to the page to copy it from. But you can see they have a Windows section here under the setting up a server guide, and we're just going to copy these two lines and paste those into this text document. So to quickly jump through this, a batch script, it'll run a command line by line until basically one command runs. Once it's done, the next command runs. Once it's done, the next command runs. So in this case, it's going to be telling Java with a certain amount of memory, is what these two arguments are, to launch a jar file, in this case the craft bucket jar file. And then honestly I can't remember what these two things are, but I don't actually remember those being there back when I first set this up on Windows, so that might be something new or optional. And then this last command, that's basically once this command finishes, so either it crashes or you manually shut down the server, it'll run the pause command, which does nothing but hold the window open for you until you hit a keystroke. So we could go ahead and save this, but I'm going to go ahead and tweak these memory settings. The memory, I'll say I can't remember which is which. One of these is basically the minimum that it will always keep allocated for Minecraft, and then the other is like the maximum that it'll let it grow to. I think that's how it works, but typically I honestly just set both of these to half of my RAM, and it seems to work out fine. So let's do 8192, I think is 8 gigs of RAM. I've got 16 gigs of RAM in my machine, and you can do more or less depending on how much you think you can spare. I typically recommend not doing more than like 3/4 of your RAM that's available on your machine, just to make sure it stays stable. Yeah, so we've got this set up, and we can just hit save. Now if I double click this, you can see it goes ahead and starts up, and bam, it creates a whole ton of files. Bam! And yes, we can look into plugins. This is where you drop all of your plugins. These are our 3 world files. It's the main world, and you have your nether and the end dimension world. Then you have band IPs and band players. These are just text files that you can, it shows you how to format it right here. So you just add a new, actually, I think this is edited from inside of the system. I haven't actually even used the IP banding. And then we have the Bukkit config file, which really just adds some extra settings to the server.properties, which is the vanilla Minecraft settings. But in here, okay, first off, a word on YML files. You'll notice I'm using not Notepad to edit these. That's really not important, but I'm using a program called Notepad++. I highly recommend it. But YAML files, the YML files, these, there's one rule that you need to always remember, and that is don't use tab to do these indents. You always want to do space, or however many spaces the formatting looks like it needs. I'm sure there's something to how many spaces you use, but I haven't figured that one out yet. Honestly, it seems like you just match whatever formatting was already in the plugin when you first got it. I had a ton of stuff open there. Okay, then you have server.properties. Oh, sorry, I didn't even show any of the actual settings for this. Okay, so bucket.yml, you have setting to allow the end, warn on overload. Most of the stuff you'll never have to change. Really, the only important things, you've got like spawn limits for how many monsters to have. Ticks is basically how many times it calculates the spawn points and things. If you set this down, I believe that it will spawn more of the stuff, but I'm honestly not sure. I've never had to edit anything in here, so you probably won't have to either. Okay, now server.properties, this file here, this one has got some important stuff in it. First off, your world name. That's basically what folder it will create if it's not there, or what folder it will look for or look into for your world. So if you wanted to say copy over a single player map, then I could just go to where those are saved on my computer. Go to .minecraft saves, and I could grab any of these and drag those in there, and all I'd have to do is type the right folder name here, and all of a sudden my server would be using those maps. Allow flight, I want on, so let's say true. Server port, you probably just want to leave that at default, but if you wanted to set a custom one, then you can put that there. Level seed, if you have a specific seed you like, say from minecraftseeds.com or something, you can put that in there. If you have a specific IP address it needs to bind to your build height, this, I believe 256 is actually just the max it can go to, but you could set this, say, down to 128 to get the a little more classic style if you wanted to. And most of these things are pretty self-explanatory. The other big ones would be game mode. That's if you're in survival, or one would be creative, or two actually would be adventure mode now, which they've added, which basically you can't break or interact with anything, you just explore, so that's incredibly kind of pointless in my opinion. Max players, self-explanatory. Generate structures, whether or not it'll generate the villager houses. If your world's already created and you change this, it's not going to change it. That would just be on the creation of a new world. And then you give the message of the day. So, yeah. So there's that. Oh, important one, very important one. For security purposes and not getting screwed over on your server, you always want to have online mode set to true, and I'm not sure why false is the default now. I thought it used to be true by default. Basically, if that's false, that means anybody with a hacked client can sign on as you and mess up anything, or sign on pretty much as anyone, but obviously signing on as an op would be a problem. That's bad. So with that set to true, what it's meaning is that players will have to authenticate to the Minecraft login servers before they'll be able to join your server. Without this, it doesn't care if they're authenticated or not, and they can just get on. So that's pretty dangerous to leave set to false. The only real reasons I could think of doing that would be, like, say, a LAN party where you don't have outside internet access, and the only other reason is really if someone's pirated the game, which is not good. So we're not supporting that here. Yeah, so I think that's about it. View distance, I actually recommend setting this a little bit lower if you want to make sure you're not going to have lag, even as low as like 5. All it does is it prevents the server from sending too many chunks to the players at a time, and it can really help with your lag. Let's see here. So that's about all I got there. You also have an ops.txt file, which is basically the list of players who are ops on your server, people with full control, can use everything, type in any like ban commands. So basically, someone signs on as you as an op because you had online mode set to false, then they could immediately ban you, and now you're screwed. So, granted, you could easily take it out of here and shut down the server if you're running it locally, but if you weren't there and you're just letting it run while you're away, then that can be a problem. Anyway, so we've got this here. I'm going to go ahead and opt myself, so I'm just going to type in OP, and then whack-a-mole. Cool. Now I'm going to launch Minecraft here and then log in. Oops. Hate having to type in my email address. Not a big fan of that. I migrated my account. Okay, so we can do direct connect here, and we've got a couple different options here. I mean, if you're just trying to connect to your local computer, then you can actually just type in localhost, and it should just connect to whatever's running on your computer at port 25565. So here we go. We're on our server. It works. Yeah, so that's cool. That's about all I've got for that. Yeah. Also, if you wanted to connect to your own, you can type in 127.0.0.1. That's sort of a universal number that means your local computer as well. The other option would be whatever your local IP address is. In my case, that is 192.168.1.11. I'll explain local versus external IPs here in just a second, but suffice to say, this does work. Now we're going to go over installing plugins, and then lastly, I will go over the actual network configuration to let people connect from the outside. Right now, they won't be able to. If you give them your local IP address, it's not going to work. You give them your external IP address, it probably won't work unless you've already got all your networking set up. So anyway, to get plugins, we're going to go to dev.bukkit.org, and I'm just going to search for World Edit because it's a really common one. And okay, let's search World Edit. Okay, now when you first search, it's going to show you like all the forum posts and stuff too, which is really annoying. I'm going to go into Projects Only, do search. And there you go, World Edit. Alright, so I'm going to download the most recent file. You can see it says it's for CraftBukkit 1.3.1 release candidate 2.0. We're technically on 1.3.2, release candidate 1, I think. But this does work perfectly. Most of the time, if it's like within a version or so, you're going to be fine. I've had plugins that were made for 1.2.5 work on 1.3.2. Some of them won't, though. It's all a matter of stuff. Okay, so when you get a plugin, you want to go into the plugins folder, and basically you need to have a jar file, and typically a folder will go along with it. World Edit's kind of a special case in that it comes with a folder, and it actually comes in a zip file. Typically you just get a jar file when you download. But basically you want to have plugins, and then the actual jar files, and any folders that go along with them. So all those other files were mostly just license stuff and README files and whatnot, which you should read through, but I'm going to ignore them. Yeah. Okay, so we just added a plugin. To update this, we actually need to restart the server, so we're going to hit stop. There is a command, reload all, but I don't recommend using that because it's incredibly unstable and has crashed my server before, and has actually sometimes corrupted things, so that's fun. So I'd recommend not using that. Anyway, so I just restarted the server. And actually, if we look in plugins folder, you can see there's a new folder for World Edit. The jar file, once it got ran by Bukkit, actually created that folder for us and created a config file for us. And if we look into that file, there's a bunch of settings for World Edit. Most plugins will have a config.yml file inside of their folder, unless they're like incredibly simple and don't need any setup whatsoever. So you can see World Edit's got a lot of settings. And the same rules go for YML files here. You know, we don't want to hit tab to get that over there. We want to hit space, 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 and put it over that way. So anything that we wanted to add or edit, you have to make sure to keep it that way. If you do a tab, the YAML file is invalid and it won't get loaded correctly. Okay, so we've got that. World Edit is hooked up, so let's go ahead and hop in the server and see if it works. Okay, so I should be able to type in //wand, which is a World Edit command. And let's just make sure it works. Let's just do like stack 200 up. Cool, there you go. So it's made a selection and stacked it. I'm not going to teach you how to use World Edit, nor am I going to teach you how to do all the configs for the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of plugins that are out there. But you can see that's how it works. Typically, you just get the jar file, copy it over, and then read the information for the plugin's website or Bukkit dev page. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that works. So the next thing to set up would be letting people actually connect to you. Now there's, I guess you could say there's two methods of doing this, one of which is really gimpy and I do not recommend at all. Unless you're just with like a friend or something. That would be setting it up through Hamachi. I'm not even going to go through that because I don't recommend it. Mostly just because forcing you to be on a virtual private network with anyone you want to play with is just sort of a security thing, and it's going to be a lot slower. The correct way to do it requires me to go into a bit of detail, so if this is too complex for you guys, go ahead and just look up how to do it through Hamachi. But to get people to connect to this, basically what has to happen is they type in an IP address, and it won't be your local IP address because that has no meaning outside of your network. So these people elsewhere in the world, they need to have an IP address that points to your network, and then that has to get pointed to your computer somehow. Typically your router is the one that does that. So I have a router, which I will now be switching to. But first off, let me show you this. Let's see here. We have localhost. I type this in. Basically, this right here, this is a website that I've got running on my local computer. If I type in this address anywhere else, it will not work. But since I type it in on my computer, it works fine. If I wanted to do this from outside of my network, I would have to have the correct ports open, which I'll get into, and I would have to type in the actual IP address for my network itself to point the traffic here, and then my router would take over getting into my computer. But if I just go to Google and type in, How is that going to my email? That's not cool. Google.com. Alright, and you just type in, what is my IP? And you'll see it points up here and it tells you what your number is. So I'm just going to copy that. Now there's another very useful tool that we'll be bringing up, yougetsignal.com. I'll put the link to this. This is yougetsignal.com, and they have a port forwarding tester, which you can put in here. You can see it automatically puts your right IP address in there because it can detect that. And then you want to type in the port that Minecraft listens on, which is 25565. Just do check. And it says it's closed. Oh no. Now, what's interesting, it's actually not closed, but the reason that it's not showing up is that my server isn't running because I've closed it. Now, if I start this server back up, it's done loading now, and if I do check, bam, it sees it's open. So basically, port check tools, they're going to try and send traffic to your network, and then if they get to a destination that knows how to reply to it, in this case, a server, then it'll see it as an open port, and that'll be good. So anyway, how did I set this up? How did I get this port number open so that traffic can go through it and point it to my computer? Well, that's going to vary depending on depending on what router you're using. I'll show you how mine is set up, which happens to be a Bukkit router. Alright, so basically your router should have an IP address of its own. How you can find this number is to open a command prompt. You can just hit start button and type in CMD, just hit enter. And now you want to type in ipconfig, config/all, and that'll print out a ton of network information for you. Basically, you want to look for either Ethernet adapter, or if you're on wireless, then it would be some sort of wireless, say like wireless adapter, such and such. And you can see here where it says IPv4 address. That's our internal IP address, our local IP. This is only going to be useful to people on your actual local network. This is not useful to anyone else outside of your network. And then next up we have default gateway. This is the number for your router most of the time. If you type in that number into a web browser, you should get a settings page for your router. It'll probably have you log in. There's default passwords are usually like admin for both, or admin password, something along those lines. You can usually Google to find out what your default password is, or obviously you should actually have a real one set for security purposes. But anyway, once you're actually into the settings page, what you need to do is search for either port forwarding, or in Bukkit's case it's called virtual servers. I think Netgear is a virtual server too. And then you want to type in your password and go past that. Okay, now you can see I have a ton of stuff set up. I've got a bunch of different servers running on this thing. But the main one that we need to look at here is the Minecraft one on top. You can see it has a checkbox to enable this rule and give the rule a name, and then I want to tell it what port to listen on. So this is basically the port that whatever program is going to be connecting to you is going to be connecting through. Minecraft is always 25565 unless you manually type it in and the address is different. So that's almost always going to be correct. You'll usually have an option for TCP, UDP, or both. Sometimes just TCP/UDP is what they'll put there. You want to do both. And then private IP address. This would be your internal local IP address, the one that I said is useless to anyone but you. That's what you want to put in here. And then lastly, on mine, they give you an option to redirect the port number, which we don't need to, so I'm just putting the same number in here, the same 25565. So basically what this is doing, someone would connect to my router via that IP address that I had originally given you. Let me load up that website that I had hosted here so you can see it does work. Now typically, honestly I have no idea why this number is working for me, because I'm not outside of my network and I've never had that actually work correctly. Typically you'd have to use your internal IP address. So that's kind of weird, but whatever. But anyway, basically you'd give that number to people, the external IP address, the one that Google gave you. They would try and connect. That traffic then goes to your network on this port, at which point your router is like, oh, it's coming in on this port. I know to send that to this IP address over the same port in this case. And then this internal IP address is your computer. So once it gets to your computer's like, oh, okay, I've got a server on that port. That's where the traffic goes. That's sort of a dumbed down way to explain it, but that's about the best I got. So, yeah, so once that is set up, once you have your ports forwarded, and there is a nice site called portforward.com. Just skip the stupid ad that they have on their main page, but they let you choose your router model, router brand and model. For example, I would do Belkin, whatever. Oh wow, they actually didn't have Belkin on here. Oh yeah, they got it. I have no idea what mine is, but let's just do search. And then you can actually find, okay, here's like all these different programs that they have information on how to set up for that server. I imagine they've got Minecraft in here. If not, you can really, yeah, Minecraft server, here you go. Yeah, and this will show you how to set up. This is exactly what I just did on mine. And this will be customized to whatever your settings page should look like. So this is an awesome resource for people who are kind of new to the process. Portforward.com. So yeah, once you've got all that stuff, you should be able to get your friends on your server. One thing to take note of is if you are on a dynamic IP address, which you probably don't know if you are, but if you're on a residential internet, you probably are on dynamic IP address. What that means is that external number that you give to everyone else, that'll change usually once a month. Your internet service provider will just update it for whatever reason. I guess it's maybe for security or something, I don't know. But it's incredibly annoying to run servers off of, so what you typically would have to do, or what'll help you, is if you use something called dynamic IP services. A good one is dynedns.org. These guys, basically what you do is you just install a program on your computer, and anytime your IP address changes, it'll send it to their servers, and they give you an address that you can use instead of the number that will always point to the right number. It's a little complex. I'm not going to show you how to set this up, but you'd probably want to look into this. There's another one called NoIP that is also quite good. A lot of people use that. I've used it in the past. Yeah, both of those are good things. If you don't want to have to always keep track of what your external IP number is and just have it always be up to date, very handy. Yeah, so I think that's about it. You guys, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to comment. Just please give me information that I can actually use to help your problem. Don't even comment if it's just like, it does not work, exclamation point. Just leave that off, please. Yep. Hopefully this will help you guys out, and please leave comments if you have any questions. Then leave that off, please. Yep. Hopefully this will help you guys out, and please leave comments if you have any questions. Thank you.